Okay, Helen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Senior Center Without Walls series. I'm Helen Fletcher, and I'm a director of the Metchosin Seniors Association. I'd like to acknowledge that Metchosin residents are living in, and this Zoom meeting is coming to you from the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. I'd like to specifically acknowledge the territory of our neighbors, the Shianu First Nation, and to express appreciation for the good relationships that are being built in between neighboring communities. Today, our event is the story of the Metchosin Community House. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items. This event will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel, Metchosin Seniors. Please keep your microphones muted unless you have a question or anecdote to share, and we welcome those. Joining us today are Jane Hammond, Francis Krusekopf, Heather Showers, and two special guests, Mitchell and Laura Farquarson, who will tell the story of the community house from its beginning to now and plans for the future. The house has a rich history and is a place for a variety of educational, recreational, cultural, and community activities and gatherings. I'm going to turn it over now to Jane, Francis, and Heather.
Okay. Good time to begin?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is exciting to be able to come together with some friends that I have made over the last many decades, getting involved in community activities. And boy, this exercise of going back to tell the community association story takes me back to not so far after 1984, when Metchosin became a municipality. There became an awareness that there might be other ways for community members to get together and share their passions other than all those polarizing political meetings that we experienced during the early years. Oh, not quite yet, Francis. In 1992, we were fortunate to have David Walsh involved in some preliminary get-togethers, and learned that residents expressed interest in getting together socially. However, someone needed to take the lead in those potluck dinners and concerts, and the next slide will show you who that is. There he is, David Walsh, one of the original instigators. We call him an honored instigator, but he did work with other people, and one of his earlier groups was termed the Community Education Project. And that group got together with the Metchosin Arts Center, bonding together in 1993. And that was the origin. The Metchosin Community Association was the amalgamation between those two groups. Like any good leader, David needed to recruit some like-minded individuals to share the work that goes along with all that fun. Beside me is Mitchell. Joe, what was it like when David approached you in 1993?
It was horrifying. We had arrived from Washington, D.C. in January 93, and I was sitting in the main room trying to figure out, my brother-in-law, who's not the most tidy person in the world, had been living in the house for several months before we got back. In fact, he had all his squashes growing in the living room, which was a little bit upsetting to figure out what to do with. But anyway, David was asking me to come and help run the community association. Some wretched person in Washington, D.C. had told him that I was a good organizer, and that was the kiss of death. And, so anyway, I sort of told David I couldn't do it. Well, eventually his bullying got me I got bullied, got me settled down, and I did become the first chairman of the community association.
Yeah, and here is a picture of some of the very original pioneers of the association. Joe is on the far right, David is on the far left. The triplets, George and Pat Triplet are sitting there, and the other one on the right next to Joe is Susan Day. And I'm not sure, Jillian Mayer got in there somehow. I'm not, but at any rate, there you are plotting. The incorporation of MCA did bring in the mission statement, which Helen did read, to initiate, encourage, and organize a variety of educational, cultural, recreational, and community activities within Metchosin. And I'm pretty sure that mission statement has stayed true for the last 30 years. This is a group that really put a lot of volunteer effort into the early years of the association. Now, we began by meeting in the upstairs room at the community hall. It had been vacated as the mayor's office when Metchosin first was incorporated. That's where the district office was located. We rented the space for $1 a year from the Metchosin Hall Society. And just quickly, the original board members, Joe Mitchell, president, David Walsh, vice president, Annika Bondaroff was treasurer, Suzanne Day was secretary, Claire Matthias, George Triplet, Pat Holloway, Jean Enright, and Jane Hammond. And some of those folks are still active. Let's see what's next. Okay, just a little plug in the Metchosin Muse that is indicating let's get busy and form some activities that interest the community. There was a lot of potluck meals and concerts. Let's maybe see what the next one is.
And I think here I could say that as sort of the president, it was just very frustrating to try and organize anything in Metchosin in those days because there was nowhere to meet. And it really was, the only place we could go was the preschool. And that was very difficult because we had rather large members and all they had to sit on were these little tiny 2-foot chairs. So it was not the best situation. But I was looking hard for somewhere where we could move, and I was riding one day up by the community house, by the municipality, and I saw this old, rather broken down cottage sort of sitting on the corner there. And so I thought that would make a good community house. And so I went around and asked questions and found out that it did in fact belong to the municipality. And the municipality were in a bit of a state of what to do with it because it was in the most terrible state and would require a lot of maintenance to make it habitable again. They didn't quite know what to do with it. So I knew, from David Walsh, I knew that we were able to get large grants to put it in order. And so I went to John Rands and said, look, if you let us have that community house for a peppercorn rent, $1 a year, and we could put it all together and it would give us somewhere for all these volunteers that we have to meet. And John said, that's a brilliant idea. Let's go for it, which completely shocked me because I didn't expect that response. But that's what happened. And it went on from there.
That's awesome. Prior to getting this house, I just wanted to list a few of the activities or mention them. The potluck dinners and entertainment were held at the community hall and the Metchosin preschool. Concerts with Pearson College and music evenings at St. Mary's Church were common, as were art courses and Yeah, we shared the space prior to the community house, back at the community hall with the originators of the Metchosin Muse. Joe forgot to mention that one of the main aspects of those years was the completion of a senior survey.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Well, this was having submitted some, or at least let David bully me into taking over the chairmanship. I thought, what on earth are we going to do? Because I didn't know Metchosin at all. I mean, we'd only been there 3 months. And so I said, well, we have a lot of seniors here. And he said, yes, we do. And I said, well, what do they want? What do they need? And then he said, well, I haven't thought about it. So I said, well, let's try and get hold of it, organize a senior survey, which we did, and became extremely popular. And everybody was wanting to put their opinions on it. And it was the start of the background to the Metchosin Community Association and what we got involved in.
Yeah, for anybody who wants to know, that survey was completed in 1996, and probably a really good idea to go back and review it.
It would, yeah.
Okay, we are now looking at a slide that shows one of the other original presidents, June Shane, and below Joe Mitchell, relaxing, obviously not working too hard. This was what the house looked like prior to any of the renovations.
It was in pretty awful condition. In fact, all the floors were covered in cat poop. Just make you happy.
So
it was a mighty job to get it in order, and it was George Triplett and his son Stuart who did that, a lot of that work.
the other pictures on the right are industrious Pearson College students that were channeled into this renovation project, as I remember hearing. Now, the second 7 and 8, yes. Not only the volunteers, but maybe Joe did mention this. Funding did come through the District of Metchosin, also a grant from the provincial government called the Millennium Grant, some funding from the Victoria Foundation, and Pacific Coast Savings, which is now Capital Coast Savings. That provided the initial funding. I love to talk about partnerships, and this was one of the best examples. This woman that's standing there, Mignon Lundmark. She was an employee of Wanda Fuca Parks and Recreation, and Wanda Fuca provided office and program assistance. She came in for several months, set up the office and operated programs. Wanda Fuca actually provided programming in recreation.
Lie down, Sadie.
The Metchosin Community Association took over.
She was marvelous. She was so helpful.
Yeah, so I'll give a plug for the following coordinators from Mignon. There was Myrna, who also doubled as a pod coordinator, Yvonne, Betty, Shelby, and Heather. And each one of them have brought their own personalities and organizational abilities to really make this organization thrive. There were a lot of different clubs and fundraising activities during those first years. Do you remember the Bridge Club, the Book Club? There was a breakfast club.
And I see a picture there, which is something that I thought might be a good idea for us to start, which was a garage sale.
Yeah,
It's become the mighty garage sale of the year now.
thought you'd like to, yeah, it looks familiar, except that it was all happening in one room.
No longer.
As opposed to more recent years. When we got into the house, there was an explosion of activities. I was just mentioning some of them. We had guest speakers, we had art shows, we had guest chefs. These are some more volunteers and board members, obviously at a potluck lunch of some sort, because you can see some good food there. I'd like to point out Tony Aish. Oh, can I back up just one little bit? Thanks. Tony Aish is standing in the back. He was absolutely one of the most pivotal volunteers, and I believe still is involved. Some of the partnerships we involved ourselves with, along with Wanda Fuca, was a local resident, Gary Kangas, was involved in the Wild West show. Do you remember that, Joe?
Oh, indeed.
That was
Yeah.
tons of fun.
Yeah.
We held dances with, in conjunction with other groups and organizations. We hosted a health and wellness fair that involved the school. We collaborated with the sheepdog trials and even the Metchosin Pomological Society, which became the basis of the first Apple Festival. The picture that you're seeing here is in recognition of Metchosin House becoming a comfort center. You'll see Betty and Linda Hamus, myself, and that actually looks like Jillian.
So
My daughter.
that is Betty Hildreth.
Betty was probably the coordinator at that time. So during this, we worked very closely with the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, and we were designated as a comfort center. This was an example. I think it was a big storm that day. Another of our major activities was the volunteer recognition afternoons. And you can see how busy we've got. Young people there. We've got, oh, that's Larry Hildreth standing up there. So we try to acknowledge volunteers every year, have a tea for them and congratulate them. Okay. Another one of our very important roles in the community was to provide space for the VHOD day program. And that started very early. That was one of the initial groups. They are renters, but they're more than renters. They are a very important aspect of what the community house is about. Now, in both of these, and yes, the Parent and Taught program, happily reporting that it's still going, but we initiated it very early in the 2000s. You can see by these three slides that the space was so well used and the numbers were growing and growing. And so the next slide is going to show you what was a logical evolution. We outgrew the space. We outgrew the house. And sadly, David Walsh had passed away in 2005. But his legacy has continued. The expansion of the community house, we acknowledged his his role in the whole formation of the association. So we were going to dedicate the expansion to him, and we have called it the David Walsh Room, which it still is. Early planning of the expansion happened in 2006. The goals, because we were overcrowding, we needed to create more space to accommodate some of our renters and our activities. I'm going to turn it over to a little bit of Joe here. We always look to Joe for her advice and wisdom.
Well, can I tell you this one?
I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
When we talked about the expansion, Joe says, it's simple. Just push that side wall out 8 feet. Okay, Joe, take
That's
it away.
what I was going to tell you. Well, we had, the people were saying, oh, we need to move, we need to get another house. I said, no problem at all. Just push that wall out. And they did, and it worked, and it was wonderful.
Okay, as soon as we started the project,
Yeah.
the word simple dropped off.
Oh, you
Okay.
forget that.
I'll just mention, in addition to the 500 square feet, we included a covered porch. We added a fireplace, French doors, upgraded the kitchen, added another washroom. We added a shower to be a comfort center. We increased the ventilation, the drainage, the furnace, the grounds and the landscaping, added the play area, additional parking, and pathways, improving accessibility. It wasn't quite as simple as pushing the wall out. However, I'll just like to mention some of the names of the expansion committee. There was a gentleman that Charles Priester had recommended, Peter Baker. He was a Vancouver architect, and he donated the plans. 2 engineers, local engineers, Ken Farquarson and Robert Patterson, absolutely brilliant people. Cliff Waters became the project manager. Chris Vandewater, as you see in this picture, was the site supervisor and the hired contractor. Then in the background, there was Betty Hildreth, Charles Priester, and myself, and many other board member volunteers. Just a last quick thing is the donations to the, I think this is still neat. Just a second. Yeah. Well, that's the completed one. We had donations in David Walsh's name for the project. A major fundraising gala that was a big fundraiser. I think we designated a great proportion of the cost to actual financial donations from the community and in-kind volunteer labor and services and donations of materials. It was an amazing coming together of the spirit of the community. It was much more than just a renovation project. It was very, very much into building a sense of closeness in what this community can accomplish. So that all culminated with the grand opening of the expansion in March of 2009. And I think, Joe, that's probably our part, and
Yeah.
we probably are going to turn it over to Heather and Laura and Princess. Thanks, everybody. Here we go.
So I'm Heather Showers, and I'm here with my great friend that I met from the Metchosin Community House when I first joined the board. And I'm a current board member. So in going through all the archives when we started this, I came across some old newsletters and things that Betty and Jane had come up with, and so. The first ever newsletter, which is now our House Happenings, said, the community house has become available to support other members of the community by supplying a friendly space for small group meetings and for musical activities. It also serves as a resource center for information on happenings in Metchosin. And I think that's still exactly what we're doing today and what we hope to can do going forward for sure. So the slide that you're seeing now, there are a number of organizations that were made possible with the help of the Metchosin Community Association, just by providing space and help with all sorts of other things. And now have gone on to be their own nonprofits. The first and our best example, I guess, is CIRC. When the concept of CIRC was first brought forward, it was in 2012, and they didn't have a place to meet. So poor Colleen Brownlee was in our back office, which wasn't very auspicious for sure. But she was in the back room of the community house until they were able to move to the existing location here. Also, they've taken over some of the events. The MCA had a special event called Gourmet Dinner for Six Raffle. And it's now the MCA's very successful event. So yeah, was a great partnership. I had the privilege of actually going to one of those dinners, and it's wonderful. Another partnership we had was the Apple Festival, which was first proposed by then board member Margie Humphreys after she made a trip to France. And as Jane mentioned, it was taken over by the Pomological Group, and it's going on and is very successful today. We also oversaw the Neighborhood Response Program, which has now gone off and has its own EOC building, and our fire chief looks after that. So our next slide is going to show some of the existing programs that were started up and are now still continuing. And Laura was very much involved in starting up a lot of those programs, so she's going to talk to a first few of these slides. So I'll let you say who the picture is for.
Okay, well, I think first of all, the credit has to go to Barb Sawatsky, who came to me one day and said, what do you think about having a singing group at the house? Because I was on the board. And I said, oh, with auditions? And she said, no, just a community thing. And I said, oh, I think that's a wonderful idea. I'm the kind of person, there used to be an English comic, and he used to say he had a belly full of music and a bad road out. And that is exactly me. And I would never have managed to go through an audition. Anyway, so this is what became of Rough Voices. It was wonderful. We started with one pianist, which was very kind of her. And the first time we had printed up 10 booklets with lyrics in them, and 20 people arrived, which was a good sort of start. And by the end, we used to get 65 people in the house going, and at Christmas time we actually had 83 people, absolutely crowded, everybody happy. And this one is with Mary McKinnon. This was, come on, Laura, Robbie Burns Day, you've seen the thing. So this was the kind of thing that we did here. But anyway, to go back, really why I thought I was going to be speaking is that I was asked to do the guest speaker series once we were into the renovated house. And I suggested that maybe we should have it regularly once a month. And I also said I would like to really have local people speaking, because there's so many interesting people in Metchosin. I didn't want to go out looking for Professor this or that. So that's what we did. And we had some wonderful speakers, and it's very hard to sort of just pick out a few, but I will. One of the first people, I was really delighted when she agreed to do it, because I knew she had a very busy life, was Vio Mitchell. At that point, she was working on vaccine delivery in northern Nigeria, which was not a particularly safe place to be. So she traveled with security guards and went into all the villages and things. And the vaccine delivery, which was the Bill Gates project, was very successful with bringing down the things of polio and things like that. So that was one of the first ones. We also, our fire chiefs and fighters, I always put something in the Muse every month as to who was going to be the speaker. And I'd put one in which said fire chief and fighters, rock stars in Peru, because they had gone to Peru and raised their own money to do it. And were helping the Peruvians set up firefighting things and teaching them techniques, and also bringing some of the equipment that we no longer needed, but they were very, very pleased to have. And as she definitely said, you know, we were treated like rock stars, and I think they deserve to be. Another speaker was Charles Priester, who decided at one point in his life that he really needed to do something different. And he bought a smallish sailing ship, got it all set up, but he had no modern equipment, just a sextant and a chronometer, just like Captain Cook did. And he sailed the South Seas for 16 months, going to Hawaii, Samoa, the Marquesas, Tahiti, Bora Bora, just all these South Seas. He had a small, inexperienced crew, but the problem was that when they got into the ports of call, some of these young lads met some of the bewitching young ladies and decided to stay. And so he was constantly looking ways to replace these laddies who decided they would stay with the locals. Derek Wolf was a very energetic fellow. He did beekeeping, and he was also big on the apple thing. But he had started making models of medieval siege engines. They were kits, and the youngsters could put them together. And he found he could sell some in a store in Victoria. And then he started doing more. And he ended up with an award-winning global educational science kit business, selling to museums and science centers and educational things absolutely worldwide. And he gave a very interesting, very long talk at the, as the guest speakers series. Now, the next people I'm going to talk about, I met when standing in the lineup for getting flu vaccinations. And it was Beth Hall and Maurice Robinson. And I've discovered that they had taken up in their 60s after retirement, they were doing paragliding. Not just coming off the sort of cliffs and the tops of mountain in BC, but traveling to France and Italy and Mexico. And the presentation they did was absolutely fascinating. I'm the sort of person that I'm giddy up 3 steps up. And to see these 60-year-olds taking off in the way that they did it was really quite marvelous. I think perhaps the most interesting and my favorite thing was Chris Pratt, who was coming into his 90s when he decided, together with a friend, with a group, to do the Silk Road. Chris, because of being in the Navy and his interest in worldwide things, had traveled in many places, but he felt this was missing and that he was going to do it. And so he called his talk Visions of the Silk Road, and with Bev Hall's help, he put together a really interesting presentation. But the thing was, when I wrote it up that this was going to happen, and we opened the doors for this thing, we had so many people that we could only bring half of them into the house for the presentation. So we decided, and Chris agreed, that we would have a second one on a Saturday afternoon. And so this was all arranged, and and the notice went into the paper. And on the day I pulled in at the community house, and my friend here was standing there, and she said, "We've got a bit of a problem, Laura." I said, "We have? Why?" Well, she said, "The place has been double booked." And the house was filled with young 4-H people, most of them with paper mache up to their elbows. There was a lady wandering around with 2 geese on leashes, and it was obvious we were not going to be able to use the house at all. I had noticed, fortunately, that there seemed to be something going on at the fire hall. So I phoned and got, fortunately, it was Stephanie who answered, and I said, "I believe you help in crises, and I have a crisis right now." And she was absolutely wonderful. She said, "Well, okay, I'll empty out the main room. We'll start setting up the chairs, and you can come over here." And then we had to get people outside to sort of direct them from the house to the fire hall. And once again, Chris had a full audience for his talk, and I always thought that was really, really quite special.
Next picture's up there.
No, the next picture's up there. What is that?
That's
It's
you.
the knitting. It's the knitting. Okay. We were at a board meeting, and Jim Challenger, who was the chairman at that time, read a very firm letter from Wendy Mitchell, who said, "It's about time you people started doing something for knitters." At that time, there were stories of knitters going into Victoria and sort of gathering in cafes and bringing out their knitting, and they didn't really please a lot of the cafe owners because they only had a coffee or two, but they sat there for 2 hours and took up all the space. So anyway, that was, Wendy also said, "I'm far too busy. You'll have to find someone to do it, look after it, but it's time you did something." So I said, "Well, actually, I
Of course you
knit.
put your hand up.
I knit," I said. So put something in the paper about it, and asked people to call me, and said, and also I gave a date when we could get together and decide how we're going to do it. I had 2 phone calls. So I went along to the house on the day and made a small pot of tea, and to my amazement, some 36 people came marching in who wanted to go knitting. And we decided we would do it alternate weeks. 1 week would be in the evening, and 1 week would be in the afternoon. And it's nearly, and we ran it for nearly 10 years. And unfortunately, COVID wrecked its damage as usual, but we're back again in very small numbers, so hopefully it will all go again. The other final thing I really stepped on before was Rough Voices, and I really have to credit Barb and Sherry Epp and their partners, because they put so much work into this. And in the end, we had about probably 25 musicians who would come and lead us. Some were in groups and this sort of thing. And all these, from the guest speaker to the knitting and the Rough Voices, these were not fundraisers, or they all ended up contributing to the house financially. They were not fundraisers. Their main object was to be, to bring community, to bring people together and make use of the house. Okay,
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So the next slide that you can see up is our Pearson College group. Pearson College and the community house have been a partnership for a long time. And
That's the actor.
yeah, it is now. They also volunteer in the community on their 2 one-week breaks that they have, one in the fall and one in the spring. Another ongoing program is the art group that you can see here. And affiliated with that is our Art on the Walls program, where it allows an artist to come and display the work. And they can also hold an afternoon tea during the month that their photos are on the wall. Still other groups that are still continuing on are our rug hookers. They're actually at the community house today. A ukulele group meets on Friday afternoons, and all these groups welcome any new members into the community. We also have our adult day program. As Jane mentioned, it still goes on Mondays and Wednesdays. And it's a very important part of our programming. We also have now Cirque's Friday afternoon teas once a month, and they're always looking for new people to come and join them. Rick Perron has taken over our Friday film night, and anybody that attends is asked to make a donation. And this month, his donation usually is going to local nonprofits, and it's for the Museum Society. So that's another great partnership that we've got. So I think sort of in my closing, I just like to say, I think our best assets are all our volunteers that come from all these groups. It's a very important part of what goes on at the community house, and we wouldn't be able to do anything that we do without any of them. And thank you, Barb, for all the pictures that you so kindly found in the last minute, because we're terrible at taking pictures of ourselves.
So reason.
So Lori, if you could take it to the next slide. And Francis is now going to come on. Oh, one more, please. There we go.
There we are.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Here we are.
Okay.
What if you could welcome to stay? Oh.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Wave your hand now. Come on.
I don't mind. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today and letting us share about the Metchosin Community Association. My name is Frances Krusekopf, and back in 2014, I joined the MCA really as a way to get to know our new community. Our family moved here in 2011. And so joining the board and getting to know local Metchosinites and getting to know what goes on in our community was a great way to connect. So unfortunately, I'm coming on here and not a great slide, but it's the slide of what we did during COVID-19. You can probably imagine that for an organization like ours that is dependent on bringing together community and bringing people into a house, that COVID-19 did not really help us with that. I'm really pleased to say that as a board, I think we did a fantastic job of encouraging board members to meet on Zoom and to keep the house going and keep activities going as we were able. So we pivoted quite a bit. When we were able to, we brought things back, and when we needed to shut down, we shut down again. So some of you will have seen signs like this. This one still hangs in the house just as you walk in the door. I will go to the next slide, Lori. Thank you. So this is Jim Challenger, a familiar face to many of you, of course. And there he is in a proud moment as we were able to bring back the Mighty Metchosin garage sale last spring. And I think, as the others have already alluded to, our fundraising events are also an amazing way to bring community together. The Mighty Metchosin garage sale, which we saw a photo earlier that has been around, has grown. It's probably grown maybe even larger than we wanted to. And I think now we spend just as much time at the beginning gathering things as we do at the end, trying to brainstorm different ways to get rid of things. We are grateful to the community of Metchosin and our neighboring communities for coming out and supporting us. And this has been a really successful event on so many fronts over the last several years, and we were so happy to bring it back. We will go to the next slide. This is an older photo, but just a way for us to acknowledge our participation in Metchosin Day. This is the corn shucking. We are very hopeful, double fingers crossed, that we will be able to come back to doing Metchosin Day again in the future. Again, both as a fundraiser, but more importantly, just as a way to bring together community and to support community. We will go to the next slide. This is the Metchosin services auction, and this is a fundraiser that is relatively new, so I would say within the last decade. And this got talked about at our family dinner table with like relatively young children, so that tells you how popular this event was. The sheep there, it is amazing to me that people are willing to bid on sheep, paper sheep, and drive the price up of a paper sheep to like to the tune of like hundreds of dollars, and you have no idea what you're getting. So it just goes to show the competitive aspect of auctions, and I'm guilty, totally guilty. I'm right in there. So not happening this spring, but hopefully coming back soon. So please wait for it.
Stacy was a great auctioneer.
She was, absolutely. And Mike Vanderwater's in the back there, and together they just make a fabulous team. Definitely was like a night of entertainment.
Was the best.
And then we'll move on to the next slide. This is the Mincemeat Fundraiser, and really Heather is the person who should be talking to this slide, because Heather coordinates this, and is absolutely right to say that this is as much fun, maybe even more fun than the fundraising aspect.
You bet. It's such a blast. And after this year, I actually had at least 3 ladies say when they came to pick up their pies, I really think I need to join this fundraiser. So that's great. We can always use new people, but we really have a great time. And it is totally amazing the inspiration that comes to people when they decorate the top of a mincemeat pie.
There's a little competition in that too, maybe.
There is, so.
Yeah.
And I won't say, no, but never mind, carry on.
To the next slide, please, Lori. This is Doug Sawatsky. Many of you, again, will recognize him. We are amazingly grateful to the Sawatskys, Barb and Doug, as well as a number of other volunteers for the metal bin. I will say, I had no idea that a metal bin could be such a great fundraiser. So you dump your junk and we make money. I don't know that it gets better than that.
So please keep coming.
Yes.
It's cleaning up Metchosin. Actually, it's probably cleaning up the whole of the Western communities, because all that stuff can't come from Metchosin.
Yes. So I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of last slides. So we'll go to the next one. Yes, right there is great. So last year, as we entered a COVID phase where we were able to invite people back for a celebration, we celebrated the 20+ year anniversary of the Metchosin Community House. It was a great opportunity to recognize Jane Hammond, who of course is here today, Joe Mitchell, also here today, and Betty Hildreth, who we spoke about earlier, to honor them and to honor those who weren't able to be there and who had the vision decades ago to bring this concept of a Metchosin Community Association to our very special community of Metchosin, and then to look at ways to sustain it over the years, as you've heard about in today's presentation. I like the way that everyone is looking forward in this photo, because it also allows us, of course, when we reflect back, we pause and then we think about the future. And so looking at the future of the Metchosin Community Association and the Community House, we'll go to the next slide, Lori. And I will just do just kind of a plug for 2 things. One, we continue to always look for and value our volunteers. Here we have 2 quiet volunteers who are always present, always kind of right there helping out, very humble in their ways of helping our efforts, and we are grateful. So Katie and Mike. And then I chose the photo in part because you'll see that it says the MCA AGM. We are looking forward as an organization and recognizing that we need to think about succession planning. We've had many people involved in our organization for many years, and they're ready to pass the baton to others. And so we invite the community, as you're watching this presentation and sharing it with others, to think about becoming a board member in the future. In particular, to think about taking on those executive roles, which can be more work and require a certain level of leadership. And so we hope that you'll think about us as you think about a way of getting engaged in community. Thank you so much. Oh, for sure. I'm actually going to shuffle a little bit and with the ladies behind me and offer up a seat and just see if there's any questions from those of you who've joined today.
Yeah. Good. No questions? Good.
I
Lot of time.
don't know, there's a green line around Barrett's name.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's been there for a while.
Oh. Oh.
Is there a question from Barrett?
No.
Barrett is a former board member.
Oh, there's
Here
Judith.
comes Judith.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I just want to thank you all. I found your presentation incredibly interesting. And for me, someone who moved here, started living here in 2008, and have used the community house and appreciated all the activities it offers and what it does for a community. For me to get the whole history laid out today was wonderful. And you guys, you all spoke so well. So thanks to Laura. And of course, I know Heather, and of course, I wouldn't miss anything that Heather does. And I want to thank Barb for the photographs, because those photographs really brought everything that you did alive. And I also agree with the sentiments that volunteers are what really make this community tick. And this whole enterprise, without this incredible volunteer base, would never have come into existence. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you for your
I was
volunteering.
I was actually muted at the time, so I couldn't say anything. Somebody muted me because I told my dog to go and lie down.
Oh, that was you.
That was me. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
She's still lying down, so that's all right.
Oh, good.
I just wanted to also say what a wonderful job you did today. I really appreciate everybody's input. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Joe, for being there. Nice to see you out and about.
There she is.
So
Yeah.
my thanks to you all.
My sentiments too. I really enjoyed the knitting cafe. I joined 10 years ago and I've met so many wonderful people and learned all kinds of new things about knitting and crocheting.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm gonna sign off and then I'll take a look.
Yes, I guess we'll probably call it the end of the event today. Certainly appreciate those lovely comments, and also I just picked up on the energy that Francis left us with, and I do hope that that word will get passed around, and lots of good energy will keep going. Thank you.
Thank you for all those people that are on the Zoom call.
Yes, thank you very much for all the people who joined us today. It was great. And the energy was really wonderful in the presentation. A lot of great information put together. Thank you very much to the Community House. Our next Senior Center Without the Walls event is also timely, I think, and will focus on how to prepare your home for aging in place. It's on February the 16th at noon on Zoom, and a panel of professionals will provide advice and tips to make your home safer and more accessible as you age. And we even have a local person talking about the work that they did in their home. Please tell your family and friends to come again. All the calendar of events are on our website, metchosinseniors.ca, and Facebook, so please check it out. We would like to hear your feedback on this event. There's a link to our survey in the chat box, and we'd like you to fill it out so that we learn what it is that you appreciate and what we can do more of. Thank you. Bye-bye.